My name is Arturo Thompson, and at 32 years old, I never imagined I would return to my childhood home as its new owner under such circumstances. The house where I grew up held so many memories, both sweet and bitter. When my parents decided to sell it and give every penny to my sister Jessica, they thought they were finally cutting me out of their lives for good. What they never expected was that I would be the anonymous buyer who would hand them an eviction notice myself. If you are watching this video right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me as I share how I reclaimed not just a house, but my dignity. Growing up in our suburban Boston home on Maple Street was picture perfect, at least for the first decade of my life. The two-story colonial with the white picket fence and the sprawling backyard was everything an only child could ask for. My father, Michael Thompson, worked as a financial advisor at a respected firm downtown, while my mother, Linda, taught piano at the local community center. They seemed to adore me, their only son, taking me fishing at the lake every summer and cheering loudly at my Little League games. Those early memories are tinged with warmth and security. Dad built me a treehouse in the giant oak that dominated our backyard. Mom would bake chocolate chip cookies that filled the house with that irreplaceable homey scent. Every night, they would take turns reading me bedtime stories in my room with the blue rocket ship wallpaper that Dad had painstakingly installed himself. Everything changed when I turned 10. That was when Jessica arrived, my little sister with golden curls and big blue eyes that seemed to hypnotize my parents from the moment they brought her home from the hospital. At first, I was excited to be a big brother. I even saved my allowance for weeks to buy her a stuffed bear that was almost as big as she was. But as the months passed, I noticed subtle shifts in the family dynamic. The first Christmas after Jessica was born, my stocking seemed lighter than usual. My parents explained they had to budget differently now with 2 children, which made sense to my young mind. But then Jessica's first birthday party was a lavish affair with clowns, pony rides, and what seemed like half the neighborhood in attendance. 3 months later, my 11th birthday was marked with a simple cake and a mumbled apology that they were too tired from caring for Jessica to plan anything special. By the time I was 12, the pattern was unmistakable. When I expressed interest in computer programming and asked for classes, my father shook his head and said, "Those things are expensive, Arturo, maybe when you are older." Yet that same month, they enrolled 3-year-old Jessica in both ballet and piano lessons because she had shown a precocious talent when she banged randomly on our living room piano. The summer before I entered high school, I returned from computer camp to find my bedroom had been converted. "We moved your things to the smaller guest room," Mom explained, without making eye contact. "Jessica needs space for her piano practice, and your room has the best acoustics in the house." My posters, books, and the model airplanes I had spent hours assembling were crammed into boxes, many items broken in the careless move. Dad clapped my shoulder. "You are a growing boy. You will understand that your sister has special talents that need nurturing." At 16, I got my first job bagging groceries at the local supermarket. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My parents had made it clear that if I wanted new clothes, school supplies, or anything beyond the bare minimum, I would need to provide for myself. Meanwhile, Jessica, now 6, was being shuttled between increasingly expensive private music lessons, dance competitions, and a prestigious arts day camp that cost more per week than I made in a month. Still, despite the growing inequity, I loved our home. My small room still had the window overlooking the backyard, where I had spent countless hours watching the seasons change. The kitchen still held the height chart on the wall where Dad had meticulously marked my growth each year until Jessica was born. The living room still had the fireplace where I had opened Christmas presents and watched football games with Dad before he became too busy with Jessica's recitals. When I graduated high school with honors, my parents attended the ceremony but left immediately after my name was called. "Jessica has a piano recital this afternoon," Mom explained hurriedly as they rushed to their car. I stood in my cap and gown, watching them drive away while my classmates took family photos. Despite everything, that house remained the physical embodiment of my childhood. Every corner held a memory. Whether it was sliding down the banister when my parents were not looking, or the secret hiding spot under the loose floorboard in my original bedroom where I kept my treasures safe from Jessica's curious hands. Even as the emotional distance between my parents and me grew wider, my connection to the physical structure of that house on Maple Street remained unbreakable. The creak of the third step on the staircase, the way the afternoon sun cast diamond patterns through the beveled glass of the front door, the distinct smell of old books and lemon polish in my father's study. These sensory memories anchored me to a time when I felt I truly belonged. College provided the escape I desperately needed. I managed to secure a partial scholarship to the University of Massachusetts for computer science, though it still left me with substantial student loans. Moving into the cramped dorm room was both terrifying and liberating. For the first time, I had space that was entirely mine, even if that space was half of a 12 by 15-foot box with cinder block walls. Those 4 years were transformative. I threw myself into my studies, often pulling all-nighters in the computer lab. While other students partied on weekends, I worked at the campus IT help desk and took extra programming jobs on the side. By junior year, I had developed a reputation as the guy who could fix any technical problem, which led to my first real internship at a startup in Cambridge. After graduation, that same startup offered me an entry-level position. The pay was modest, but I took it without hesitation. Renting a tiny studio apartment with a futon that doubled as my bed and couch. I lived on ramen and coffee, pouring everything I had into proving myself at work. Despite the physical and emotional distance, I made consistent efforts to maintain a relationship with my family. Every Sunday evening, I would call home, listening to stories about Jessica's latest accomplishments while offering brief updates about my own life that seemed to generate little interest. "That is nice, dear," my mother would say after I mentioned a promotion or a successful project. "Did Jessica tell you she won first place in the regional piano competition?" "We are so proud." For birthdays and holidays, I would carefully select thoughtful gifts for everyone. Dad received rare books about financial history that he had mentioned wanting years ago. Mom got handcrafted jewelry from local artists that matched her preferred style. For Jessica, now growing into a teenager, I chose the latest electronics and fashion items that friends with sisters assured me would be appreciated. In return, I would receive a hastily purchased gift card or, more often, nothing at all because things have been so busy with Jessica's schedule. When I received my first significant promotion 3 years into my career, I called my parents immediately, hoping they might finally show some pride in my achievements. "That is great news," Dad said distractedly. "Listen, can you transfer some money to our account? Jessica has been invited to a special summer intensive at Juilliard, and we are a bit short this month." It was not the first such request, nor would it be the last. Over the years, I had sent thousands of dollars to support Jessica's career. Money I could ill afford, as I was still paying off student loans and trying to establish myself financially. When I hit a professional milestone and was invited to speak at a major tech conference in Boston, I reserved 4 tickets, hoping my family would finally see what I had accomplished. I sent the invitation weeks in advance, calling to confirm they had received it. "Oh, that weekend is not good," Mom said apologetically. "Jessica has an audition for a scholarship program. You understand, right? This could be her big break." I attended my conference alone, giving my presentation to a room full of industry leaders while 3 empty seats in the front row mocked me. Despite the repeated rejections, I persisted. I sent holiday cards, made phone calls, and whenever I was in Boston for work, I would try to arrange a family dinner. Sometimes these efforts were successful, and I would find myself sitting at a restaurant table, listening to Jessica talk about her latest achievements while my parents beamed with pride. The inequality was stark even in these rare gatherings. Dad would order the most expensive wine for Jessica to develop her palate, though she was underage. Mom would bring photo albums full of Jessica's performances but could not recall which company I worked for. When the check came, it was always pushed subtly in my direction, regardless of who had suggested the meal or chosen the upscale venue. Through dedication and long hours, my career continued to flourish. I moved from the startup to a major tech company, then to a senior position at a successful software firm. My financial situation improved dramatically, allowing me to pay off my loans, build savings, and eventually invest in a comfortable condo in Seattle. When I was promoted to Director of Engineering at 30, I finally felt I had achieved something substantial. My team respected me, my ideas were valued, and for the first time, I felt truly secure. I dated occasionally, made good friends, and built a life that was fulfilling on its own terms. Even if it lacked the family connection I still secretly craved, I made one last attempt to bridge the gap during a Christmas visit home. I brought expensive gifts and made reservations at the best restaurant in town. I listened attentively to Jessica's stories about her struggles as a music major at a prestigious conservatory. When she complained about her roommate in the tiny apartment my parents rented for her near campus, I bit my tongue, remembering my own cramped dorm room and the long hours I had worked to afford even that. At the end of the evening, I offered to help Jessica with her rent so she could focus more on her music and less on the part-time barista job she had reluctantly taken. "That is so generous of you," my mother gushed, the most enthusiastic response I had received from her in years. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps, through financial support, I might finally earn a place in my family. How wrong I was. The call came on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was in my office, reviewing quarterly projections, when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. "Is this Arturo Thompson?" The voice was vaguely familiar. "Yes. Who is calling?" "This is Eleanor Winters from next door to your parents. You might not remember me, but I used to give you cookies when you mowed my lawn as a teenager." The memory surfaced immediately. Mrs. Winters, with her cat-eye glasses and collection of ceramic birds. "Of course I remember you, Mrs. Winters. Is everything all right?" There was a pause. "Well, I am not sure it is my place, but I thought you should know. Your parents have put their house up for sale. There was a realtor placing a sign in the yard this morning." The news hit me like a physical blow. "The house. Our house. For sale? Are you sure?" "Absolutely certain, dear. The realtor left some flyers in mailboxes on the street. Open house this weekend." I thanked her for letting me know and ended the call, my mind racing. Why would they sell the house without even mentioning it to me? It had been in our family for over 30 years. My grandfather had helped my father with the down payment as a wedding gift. With shaking hands, I dialed my parents' number. Mom answered on the fourth ring. "Hello?" She sounded distracted, as usual. "Mom, it is Arturo. I just heard something strange. Are you and Dad selling the house?" The lengthy pause confirmed it before she spoke. "Yes, we decided it was time for a change. The place is too big for us now, and the maintenance is becoming a burden at our age." "Why did you not tell me?" "I had to hear it from Mrs. Winters." Another pause. "Well, honestly, Arturo, we did not think it concerned you. You have your own life in Seattle." The dismissal stung. "Of course it concerns me. That is our family home. I grew up there." My voice cracked slightly. "I would have appreciated knowing about such a major decision." "It is our house, not yours," my father's voice cut in. He must have picked up another extension. "We do not need your permission to sell our own property." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I never suggested you did, Dad. I am just surprised you would not mention something this significant." "Well, now you know," he replied flatly. A thought occurred to me. If you are downsizing, maybe I could buy the house. I have been thinking about investing in property, and it would keep it in the family. The idea formed as I spoke, growing more appealing with each word. I could preserve the home that meant so much to me. My mother's nervous laugh was followed by my father's scoff. "Do not be ridiculous. You could not afford it. The housing market in Boston is booming right now. I am doing quite well financially," I countered, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "I would be willing to pay market value." "The answer is no, Arturo," my father stated firmly. "We already have plans for the proceeds." "What plans?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "Jessica is at a crucial point in her career." My mother jumped in eagerly. "She has been invited to participate in several international competitions, but the travel expenses are considerable. And she needs a proper piano. A real concert grand. Plus, she has her eye on an apartment in New York, closer to the music scene. Of course, it always came back to Jessica. So you are selling our family home to fund Jessica's career? What about your retirement? Where will you live? We will find a small rental, Dad said dismissively. Jessica's talent deserves every advantage we can give her. This is her moment, and we need to support her dreams. And what about my dreams? The question slipped out before I could stop it, childish and plaintive. The silence that followed was deafening until my father broke it with words that would change everything. You have always been self-sufficient, Arturo. You have your education, your career. You made your own way without much help from us, and you seem to enjoy reminding us of that fact. Jessica is different. She is an artist, sensitive and special. She needs our support in a way you never did, because you never offered it, I replied quietly. Do not play the victim, my father snapped. You are a grown man with a good job. You are on your own now, and that is how it should be. Jessica will pay us back through her success when she becomes famous. This is an investment in her future. I heard my mother's murmured agreement in the background, followed by what sounded like a suppressed laugh. Were they actually laughing at me? At my pain? At my desire to preserve our family home? I see, I said, my voice unnaturally calm as something cold and hard formed in my chest. Thank you for being so clear about where I stand. Oh, do not be so dramatic, my mother sighed. We have to go now. Jessica is calling on the other line, probably with news from her audition today. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. I had just been dismissed by my own parents so they could take a call from my sister. The message could not have been clearer. I did not matter. I never had. In that moment, something broke inside me, but something else hardened. If they wanted to sell the house that held all my childhood memories to fund Jessica's uncertain career, that was their right. But perhaps there was another way to approach this situation. One that would finally make them understand the consequences of their lifelong favoritism. As director of engineering with substantial savings and excellent credit, I had more financial resources than my parents realized. If they would not sell the house to me directly, perhaps they would sell it to someone else. Someone they did not know was me. The plan began to take shape in my mind, fueled by decades of hurt and rejection. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. This required my full attention. I spent the early hours researching real estate laws in Massachusetts and the process of purchasing property through a limited liability company. By noon, I had reached out to Marcus Jenkins, a college friend who had become a successful real estate attorney in Boston. Arturo? This is unexpected. How have you been? Marcus's familiar voice brought back memories of late-night study sessions and cheap pizza. I have been better, I admitted. I need legal advice on a delicate matter. Are you free for lunch today? My treat. 3 hours later, I was sitting across from Marcus at an upscale restaurant near his office, explaining my situation. Let me get this straight, Marcus said, leaning forward. Your parents are selling your childhood home to fund your sister's music career, refused to sell it to you directly, and now you want to buy it anonymously through an LLC? Exactly. Is it possible? Marcus tapped his fork against his plate thoughtfully. Legally, yes. It is done all the time for privacy reasons, especially with high net worth individuals. But Arturo, have you considered the emotional implications? This is your family we are talking about. I met his concerned gaze steadily. They made it clear I am not really part of that family anymore. I am just the reliable ATM they occasionally withdraw from. After hearing more details about my relationship with my parents and sister, Marcus sighed deeply. I do not normally encourage clients to make major financial decisions based on emotional responses, but in this case, I understand why you feel the need to do this. By the end of lunch, we had a plan. Marcus would help me establish Heritage Holdings LLC, a company that on paper would appear to be a small real estate investment firm. All communications would go through Marcus's office, maintaining my anonymity. We would hire Carol Winters, a real estate agent from a different firm than the one my parents were using, to represent the LLC in the purchase. We will need to move quickly, Marcus advised. Properties in that area are selling fast. And to ensure you get it, we should be prepared to offer above asking price. Whatever it takes, I agreed. The next 2 weeks were a blur of paperwork, wire transfers, and strategic planning. I took personal days from work, citing a family emergency, which was not entirely untrue. Marcus expedited the LLC formation, and Carol began gathering information about the property without raising suspicions. When the open house weekend arrived, Carol attended as an interested buyer. She reported back that the house was in good condition but would benefit from updates. Information she would use to negotiate while ensuring we did not undervalue the property. Your parents seemed eager to sell quickly, she informed me during our conference call. They mentioned several times that they have plans for the proceeds. There are other interested parties, but none have made formal offers yet. Submit ours today, I instructed. 10% above asking price, minimal contingencies, flexible closing date of their choosing. It was an offer designed to be irresistible, especially to sellers in a hurry. Carol warned me this was unusually aggressive. Are you sure? We could start closer to asking and negotiate. I am sure, I replied firmly. This property has unique value to my company. 2 days later, Marcus called with the news. They accepted the offer from Heritage Holdings. Congratulations! You just bought your childhood home. A complex mix of emotions washed over me. Vindication and grief tangled together. Did they have any other offers? 2, both at asking price. Yours was the clear winner from their perspective. Carol said your mother was practically giddy when she heard the amount. Of course she was. More money for Jessica's grand piano. The closing process moved swiftly. My parents, eager to access the funds, agreed to an expedited timeline. I arranged for a trusted colleague to handle my work responsibilities while I focused on finalizing the purchase and planning my next steps. Throughout this period, I received no calls from my parents, no updates about the house sale, no invitation to claim any childhood belongings that might still be there, no acknowledgement of this significant change in our family history. Their silence confirmed I had made the right decision. 30 days after the initial offer, Marcus called to tell me the closing was complete. Heritage Holdings LLC now officially owned the property at 27 Maple Street. And my parents had their money. What now? Marcus asked. Now we give them time to spend some of that money on Jessica. Time to feel secure in their decision, I replied. Then we serve them with a notice to vacate. Marcus was quiet for a moment. As your attorney, I have to advise you that there are less confrontational approaches. We could offer them a lease agreement, allow them to stay as tenants. No, I said firmly. They made their choice. They chose Jessica over me. And they chose money over our family home. Now they can live with the consequences of that decision. We agreed to wait 30 days before serving the eviction notice. This was partly strategic, allowing them time to spend or allocate funds in ways that would be difficult to reverse, but also gave me time to prepare emotionally for what would come next. During those 30 days, I arranged a leave of absence from work, citing family matters requiring my presence in Boston. I booked a flight and a long-term hotel stay. I drafted and redrafted the notice to vacate, working with Marcus to ensure it was legally sound, while also making it unmistakably personal when the time came. Exactly 60 days after they had sold their house to a stranger, my parents would learn that the stranger was their son. The day arrived with the crisp clarity of a New England autumn. Maple Street looked just as I remembered it. The trees beginning to turn gold and crimson. The familiar houses with their neat lawns and welcoming porches. As I walked up the driveway to my childhood home, now legally my property, I experienced a dizzying sense of déjà vu mingled with the surreal knowledge that everything had changed. The house looked smaller than in my memory, though it was still the stately colonial I had grown up in. The white paint was slightly worn in places, and the garden my mother had once tended so carefully showed signs of neglect. Still, it was unmistakably home, from the slightly crooked shutters on the second-floor window to the stone path leading to the front door that I had helped my father lay one summer when I was 12. I paused at the bottom of the porch steps, taking a deep breath. In my hand was an envelope containing the official notice to vacate, giving my parents 60 days to leave the premises. Marcus had suggested having it delivered by a professional service, but this was something I needed to do myself. As I climbed the familiar steps, memories flooded back. The summer afternoons spent reading on this porch. The Halloween when I waited here to scare the neighborhood kids. The prom night photo my date and I had taken against the railing. My father proudly adjusting my tie while my mother fussed with my boutonniere. One of the rare moments they had seemed genuinely invested in my life. Standing before the door, I detected the faint scent of my mother's favorite roses from the bushes flanking the entrance. I raised my hand to knock, then hesitated, realizing with a strange jolt that I no longer needed permission to enter. This was my house now. Nevertheless, I knocked, the sharp sound echoing in the quiet afternoon. Footsteps approached from inside, and then the door swung open. My mother stood there, her hair grayer than I remembered from my last visit, wearing the apron she always put on when baking. For a split second, she looked exactly like the mom from my childhood, before Jessica, before the favoritism became so blatant. Then her expression shifted from casual curiosity to shock. "Arturo? What are you doing here?" She glanced over her shoulder nervously. "We were not expecting you." "Clearly," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "May I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped back. "Of course. But this is not a good time. Your father and I were just discussing some financial matters, and Jessica will be calling soon about her apartment search." I stepped into the foyer, inhaling the familiar scent of lemon polish and the faint aroma of something baking. The house was exactly as I remembered, yet somehow different. Perhaps because I now viewed it through adult eyes, or perhaps because I now owned every square inch of it. "Michael," my mother called, her voice strained. "Arturo is here." My father emerged from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose and a calculator in hand. His eyebrows rose in surprise. "Arturo, this is unexpected. Is everything all right in Seattle?" "Seattle is fine," I said, glancing around the entryway. "I am here about the house, actually." My mother frowned. "The house? But we already explained our decision. The sale is final, and we have allocated the funds for Jessica's career advancement. There is nothing more to discuss." "Actually, there is." I held up the envelope. "This is for you. A formal notice to vacate these premises within 60 days. My father's expression darkened as he took the envelope. "What nonsense is this? We sold to a company, Heritage Holdings. What do you have to do with our arrangement with them?" "I am Heritage Holdings," I stated calmly. "Or rather, I own it. I established the LLC, specifically to purchase this house after you refused to sell it to me directly." The color drained from both their faces. My mother sank onto the bench by the door, while my father tore open the envelope with trembling hands. "This cannot be legal," he sputtered after scanning the document. "It is completely legal," I assured him. "The sale was legitimate. You agreed to all terms voluntarily. The fact that you did not know the identity of the buyer is irrelevant from a legal standpoint. But why would you do this?" My mother's voice was barely a whisper. "Is this some kind of revenge?" Before I could answer, the front door opened behind me. Jessica walked in, her arms full of shopping bags emblazoned with designer logos. At 22, my sister had grown into a beautiful young woman, though I barely recognized her. Our interactions over the years had been minimal, limited to brief holiday gatherings and the occasional family dinner. "Mom, Dad, you will never believe what I found for the new apartment," she announced excitedly. Then she noticed me and stopped short. "Arturo, what are you doing here?" My father thrust the eviction notice toward her. "Your brother has just informed us that he was the one who bought our house. And now, he is evicting us." Jessica's expression cycled rapidly from confusion to disbelief to outrage. "That is not possible. You sold to some investment company, a company I created for the purpose of buying this house," I explained. "The house our parents refused to sell to me directly, preferring to give a stranger their family home so they could fund your piano and apartment in New York." Jessica's face flushed. "So this is about me? You are punishing them because they support my career? No, I said firmly. This is about decades of being treated as less valuable, less worthy of love and support than you. This is about our parents selling my childhood home without even having the decency to tell me themselves. This is about them laughing at me when I expressed interest in preserving our family legacy. We never laughed at you, my mother protested weakly. I heard you, I countered. On the phone, when I asked about buying the house, you laughed and then rushed to take Jessica's call. My father's face hardened. So this is your revenge. Buying our house through deception and then throwing us out on the street. I never thought you could be so cruel. Cruel? The word hung in the air between us. Was it cruel when you converted my bedroom into a music room for Jessica without asking? Was it cruel when you refused to attend my college graduation because Jessica had a recital? Was it cruel when you called me only when you needed money for her lessons, competitions, and equipment? My voice remained steady, but I could feel years of suppressed emotion rising to the surface. I am not throwing you out on the street. I am giving you 60 days, which is more notice than you gave me about selling the house in the first place. The money from the sale is yours, just as you planned. You have more than enough to find a comfortable place to live. But this is our home, my mother cried, tears streaming down her face. It was my home too, I replied softly. Until you decided it was just an asset to liquidate for Jessica's benefit. Jessica stepped forward, her designer bags forgotten on the floor. You cannot do this to them. They are your parents. And I was their son, I answered. Yet that fact never seemed to matter much. My father crumpled the eviction notice in his fist. If you go through with this, you are no longer our son. Do you understand? This severs any relationship we might still have had. I met his gaze steadily. You severed that relationship years ago, Dad. You just never had the courage to admit it. I was simply the backup plan, the reliable one who would care for you when Jessica's career inevitably failed to provide the return on investment you expected. Jessica gasped at this, but I continued, I do not wish any of you ill. I am simply establishing boundaries that should have been established long ago. You made your choice. You chose Jessica. You chose money over family history. Now I am making mine. The room fell silent, except for my mother's quiet sobs. My father stood rigid with anger and shock. Jessica looked between us, perhaps truly seeing the family dynamic clearly for the first time. The notice gives you 60 days, I said into the silence. I suggest you use that time to find suitable accommodation. If you need recommendations for affordable rentals in the area, I would be happy to provide them. Get out, my father said through clenched teeth. Get out of our house. It is not your house anymore, I corrected him gently. But I will respect your request for privacy. My attorney will be in touch regarding any questions about the eviction process. I turned to leave, pausing at the door to look back at the three of them, this family that had never truly been mine. My mother hunched and weeping on the bench, my father standing rigid with fury and disbelief. Jessica, wide-eyed, and for once, speechless. For what it is worth, I said quietly, I never wanted it to come to this. All I ever wanted was to be valued equally, to be seen. Then I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door firmly behind me on a chapter of my life that had finally reached its overdue conclusion. The fallout was immediate and intense. Before I had even returned to my hotel room, my phone began lighting up with notifications. Text messages from Jessica alternated between rage and tearful pleas. Voicemails from my mother cycled through guilt trips, tearful breakdowns, and attempts at emotional manipulation. My father, predictably, maintained a stony silence. I did not respond to any of them, following Marcus's legal advice to let the situation cool before engaging further. Instead, I extended my hotel reservation and focused on practical matters. I contacted a property management company to eventually handle the house once my parents vacated. I researched rental properties in their price range that would accommodate their needs, creating a list they could use if they chose to. 3 days after serving the eviction notice, the first wave of extended family reactions hit. My mother's sister, Aunt Paula, called to express her outrage. How could you do this to your own parents? After everything they have done for you, I listened calmly. And what exactly have they done for me? Aunt Paula, can you name 3 significant ways they supported me as an adult? Her hesitation spoke volumes. Well, they raised you. Put a roof over your head. The bare minimum required by law, I pointed out. Meanwhile, they have given Jessica everything from private lessons to international trips to now, apparently, an apartment in New York. Jessica is special, Aunt Paula insisted. Her talent needs nurturing. And mine did not? I asked quietly. My academic achievements, my career success, my financial stability despite having no parental support, none of that was worth nurturing? The conversation ended with her huffing that I would regret this decision when I was older. Similar calls came from other relatives, each following the same pattern. Initial condemnation, followed by an inability to justify the years of unequal treatment when pressed for specific examples. A week after the confrontation, Jessica showed up at my hotel. The front desk called to inform me my sister was in the lobby, insisting on seeing me. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her in the hotel restaurant. She looked disheveled, her usual polished appearance marred by stress. "You have to stop this," she said without preamble as she slid into the booth across from me. "Mom is a wreck. Dad is not sleeping. They do not deserve this." I studied her face, searching for the little sister I had once adored. "What do they deserve, Jessica?" "Unwavering support regardless of how they treat others. Unconditional love that only flows in one direction?" She fidgeted with her napkin. "They love you. They just show it differently." "They do not show it at all," I corrected. "When was the last time either of them called just to ask how I was doing? Not to request money or compare me unfavorably to you." Jessica had no answer for that. "Do you know," I continued, "that when I got my first big promotion, I called them immediately, hoping for just a moment of pride? Your audition was more important. When I bought my condo, I invited them to visit. Your summer intensive made that impossible. Every milestone in my life has been overshadowed by something in yours. That is not my fault," she protested. "I never asked to be the favorite." "No. But you never refused the preferential treatment either. You accepted every advantage, every sacrifice they made at my expense. Without question." Her eyes flashed. "So I should have refused opportunities because you were jealous? Turned down lessons and competitions because poor Arturo might feel left out?" "Not jealous," I corrected, "neglected. And no, you should not have refused opportunities. But perhaps, as you grew older, you might have noticed the imbalance. You might have encouraged them to attend my college graduation or acknowledge my achievements. You might have questioned why they were selling their house to fund your apartment when you are a grown woman perfectly capable of working and paying rent like most people your age." Jessica's expression shifted from defensiveness to something more calculating. "If this is really about feeling appreciated, we can fix that. Mom and Dad will apologize. We will make more effort to acknowledge your accomplishments. Just stop this eviction nonsense." I shook my head slowly. "This is not a negotiation tactic, Jessica. The house is mine now. They made a business decision to sell it, and I made a business decision to buy it. Then I will sue you," she threatened, her voice rising. "What you did was fraudulent. My attorney assures me it was completely legal," I replied calmly. "But you are welcome to waste your new apartment fund on legal fees if you wish." Our conversation ended with Jessica storming out, pausing only to inform me that I had destroyed our family. I sat alone in the restaurant afterward, feeling strangely empty. There was no satisfaction in her distress or my parents' panic, only a grim resolution that this was necessary for my own well-being. 2 weeks into the 60-day notice period, my father finally reached out. His email was terse. "We need to talk. Meet at the house tomorrow at 3 p.m. When I arrived, I found both my parents waiting in the living room. The atmosphere was tense but less hostile than during our last encounter. "We have been thinking about your position," my father began stiffly. "While we still believe your actions were extreme, We recognize there may have been some imbalance in how we distributed our attention and resources between you and Jessica. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of wrongdoing I had ever heard from him. We propose a compromise, my mother added quickly. Allow us to stay in the house as tenants. We will pay fair market rent. In exchange, we will make more effort to include you in family matters. I considered their offer carefully. Where is Jessica today? They exchanged glances. She is looking at apartments, my mother admitted. The one in New York fell through due to financial constraints. So they had already spent enough of the house money to create problems, but not enough to secure Jessica's future. Interesting. I appreciate the offer, I said finally. But I must decline. The house is no longer a healthy environment for any of us. Too many negative memories are embedded in these walls. So that is it? My father's composure cracked slightly. You will force your elderly parents out of their home of 30 years? You chose to sell your home of 30 years, I reminded him. The consequences of that decision are yours to bear, not mine. However, I am willing to help you find appropriate housing within your budget. I have researched several options that would suit your needs. I handed them the list I had prepared. My mother took it reluctantly. What will you do with the house? She asked. That is no longer your concern, I replied gently. But if it brings you any comfort, I do not intend to sell it immediately. Some things still hold value beyond their market price. At least to me. As I left that day, I realized something important had shifted. For the first time in my adult life, I was setting the terms of our relationship rather than desperately accepting whatever scraps of attention they deigned to offer. It did not feel like victory, but it did feel like progress. True to my word, I did not waver on the eviction. When the 60-day period ended, my parents moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment, 5 miles away, closer to Jessica's new place. They had found it from the list of options I provided, though they never acknowledged this fact. Jessica had ultimately settled for a shared apartment with 2 roommates, her dreams of a luxurious New York lifestyle temporarily on hold. The day after they moved out, I walked through the empty house alone. Their hasty departure had left marks. Nail holes where pictures had hung, scuff marks on the hardwood, a forgotten coffee mug in the kitchen cabinet. I moved slowly from room to room, reacquainting myself with the space that had shaped my earliest years. My old bedroom, long since converted to Jessica's music room, still held the ghost of what it had once been. If I looked carefully, I could see the faint outline where my rocket ship wallpaper had been painted over. The window still had the small crack in the corner from when I had accidentally hit it with a baseball at 11. I spent that first week cleaning, repairing, and reclaiming the space. I hired painters to refresh the walls in colors of my choosing. I replaced the outdated appliances in the kitchen and renovated the bathrooms. Each change felt symbolic, washing away the painful past and creating something new and wholly mine. Friends from Seattle came to help, turning the renovation into something of a house party. Tony from accounting brought his toolbox and expertise in home improvement. Sarah from marketing revealed a surprising talent for interior design. Even Marcus stopped by regularly, bringing takeout and offering both legal and life advice. How does it feel? He asked one evening as we sat on the newly restored porch, beer bottles in hand. Getting everything you wanted? I considered the question carefully. It is not about having the house. It is about reclaiming what it represents. My childhood, my history, my right to be seen and valued. With each passing week, the property transformed. The basement became a home office where I could work remotely. The formal dining room my parents had rarely used became a casual gathering space with comfortable seating and a big screen television. My old bedroom was restored to its original purpose, though with more adult furnishings than rocket ships. Throughout this period, contact with my family was minimal. Jessica sent occasional text messages, mostly updates about auditions or performances, seemingly oblivious to the irony of continuing the same self-centered communication pattern that had contributed to our estrangement. I responded politely but briefly. My parents maintained their distance. I heard through Mrs. Winters that they were adjusting to apartment life, though my mother complained about the lack of space for her gardening. and my father missed his study. I sent them a housewarming gift, a digital photo frame preloaded with family pictures spanning decades. The thank you card came from my mother alone, her handwriting shaky but sincere. 3 months after they moved out, I invited them to dinner. Not at the house, which would have been too fraught with tension, but at a neutral restaurant halfway between our two homes. To my surprise, they accepted. The meal was awkward at first, conversation stilted and careful. But as the evening progressed, something unexpected happened. My father, perhaps loosened by a glass of wine, began asking questions about my work, showing genuine interest in my recent projects. My mother shared stories from their early days in the house, including some I had never heard involving my grandfather's help with renovations. "He would be proud of what you have done with the place," she said softly. "He always said you had a good head on your shoulders." For the first time in memory, Jessica's name did not dominate the conversation. She was mentioned only in passing, a natural inclusion rather than the central focus. Whether this represented genuine change or simply cautious navigation of our new reality remained to be seen, but it was a start. As we prepared to leave, my father hesitated, then asked, "Would it be possible? That is, would you be open to us visiting the house sometime? Not to stay, just to see what you have done with it." I considered his request, perhaps in time. "It is still a work in progress." He nodded, accepting my boundary without protest, another small but significant shift. That night, lying in what had once been my parents' bedroom and was now mine, I reflected on the journey of the past months. The hurt and rejection that had driven me to such dramatic action had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something more manageable, less raw. I realized that what I had really purchased was not just a house, but my freedom. Freedom from the endless cycle of seeking approval that would never come. Freedom from the role of family ATM without family benefits. Freedom to define my own worth, rather than accepting their limited valuation. Over the following year, a new pattern emerged. My parents and I established a cautious relationship based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or expectation. We met monthly for dinner, spoke occasionally by phone. Jessica drifted in and out of these gatherings, still struggling to find her footing in a world that did not revolve around her talent. The house became a home again, filled with friends, colleagues, and eventually, someone special. Amanda, a software engineer I met through a professional networking event, saw past my complicated family history to the person I had become despite it, or perhaps because of it. "You know what I admire most about you?" she said one evening. As we sat on the porch swing I had installed in place of my parents' formal seating. "Your resilience. You took something painful and transformed it into strength." 2 years after the eviction notice that had changed everything, I hosted a housewarming party. Among the invited guests were my parents. Their acceptance came with a note from my mother. "We would be honored to see your home." They arrived exactly on time, bearing a small potted plant, a cutting from my mother's prized roses that she had somehow managed to keep alive in their apartment. "For your garden," she explained. A new start from old roots. As I showed them around, I watched their faces carefully. There was sadness there, certainly, at seeing how thoroughly I had made the space my own. But there was also something that looked remarkably like pride. In the kitchen, my father paused by the refrigerator where I had mounted a single photograph, the only one I had kept from the original house. It showed the 4 of us, my parents, Jessica, and me, standing in front of the house the day Jessica came home from the hospital. We all looked happy, full of hope for the future. "I remember that day," he said quietly. "We thought we had everything figured out." "We all make mistakes," I replied. "The question is whether we learn from them." He nodded slowly, meeting my eyes with newfound respect. "I believe we are learning." That evening, as guests mingled throughout the house that had once been the epicenter of so much pain, I realized the most important lesson of all. True healing does not come from revenge or retribution, but from reclaiming your own narrative. My parents had written me out of their story, but I had written myself back in. Not as the forgotten son, but as the author of my own life. The house on Maple Street was mine now. not as a weapon against those who had hurt me, but as a symbol of my journey from rejection to self-worth, from seeking external validation to finding strength within. Standing in what had once been my childhood home and was now truly mine, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for decades. The cycle was broken, the wounds were healing, and the future, for the first time, felt entirely my own to shape. Before I end this story, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever had to take a stand to reclaim your self-worth? How did it change your life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding personal strength. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately set you free.